Hello, everybody. This is Bart Bettiga, publisher of Tile Letter Magazine, executive director of the National Tile Contractors Association. I'm very pleased to have with me today my guest for our March issue of Tile Letter Magazine, which has a special emphasis or focus on women in tile. And I have with me today Heather Ruhl, who is the national technical manager, right, Heather, with HB
Yes,
Fuller.
sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, welcome and thanks for being with us and being my guest today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
All right. So tell me a little bit about Heather Ruhl. How long have you been with HB Fuller, and how did you qualify for that particular position? And then let's talk about National Technical Manager, what you do on an everyday basis.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to try to remember all of those questions.
I know, don't you? Yeah.
So I've been with HB Fuller. It will be 7 years this June. So I guess about 6.5 years right now. I always joke, I've been asked quite a few times, how do you end up with tech? How did you end up in construction? And I always just say, well, tech offered me a job, as the way most people get jobs. But they actually got me. I was hired right out of college. So I went to UW-Madison for chemical engineering.
Okay.
And then I have a focus in technical communication and international engineering. So when I finished my degree there, I came over to work for tech as an area technical manager, or I started out as an area technical specialist, which is kind of like a trainee role is the way I would put it. And I basically focused on tile installations, and I covered both basically everything east of the Mississippi. And then I also covered kind of in a backup support role, most of the US for a period before I settled into a technical manager role in just the Midwest. So I was in that position for about 2 years before they basically looked at what I was doing and said, you do a lot of trainings with people. Do you want to just do trainings? And I love training people. I think, one of my favorite things to do as part of my job is watching people learn, watching people find out or discover different ways of doing things or new ways of doing things. And especially, with tile contractors, I always find it interesting that when you get them in those training situations, it's not just about what I can teach them, it's about what they can teach me and what they can also teach each other, right? It's always so interesting to watch the different conversations happen, because you've got people that are from the same area at a lot of these trainings that they all get to interact and talk about their best practices and what their experiences with different products have been, and different installation methods have been, and really watch kind of the learning happen. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. So I did that for about 2 years. And then when the National Technical Manager role came up, I stepped into that role, and now I manage the technical team, which is kind of split up. For us, it's split up into kind of 2 sub teams. We have our field technical reps, and then we also have an internal technical support hotline. So anytime people have any questions or issues or concerns, or they're not sure what product to use, we actually have a hotline that you can call and they can answer. I joke, it's probably at least 95 to 99% of all questions.
Well, that's fascinating. So you have a chemical engineering background from what, a degree from Wisconsin, yes. And then is HB Fuller Tech the first job you got coming out
Yep,
of all your school?
It is. Yep.
I hope it's the last.
Yeah, you and me both.
That's a wonderful thing. But from that standpoint, how long, maybe help me a little bit. You mentioned tech, but there's other brands underneath HB Fuller. So can you outline a little bit about the company's infrastructure for our readers?
Yeah. So HB Fuller, I say it's the largest adhesive company you've never heard of. But if you have windows on your house, headlights on your car, or have ever opened a box of Cheerios or had a Coors Light, you've used our product, right? So we're in everything from packaging, converting, label making, and then our division is actually the construction division. So within construction, we do everything from utility and infrastructure, roofing, and then our division is what we call the flooring division. That's what I work in. So we don't just have tech. We also have, currently there's Chapco and also Parabond are the big adhesives. So we don't just do tile adhesives, but we also do the resilient flooring adhesives as well, kind of under that subdivision.
So what are your more popular products with our tile installers now? What are the best selling products in the line, in the tech line?
I would probably say one of the most popular, the ones that I just hear the most about, would be our Ultimate 6+ mortar. It's one that it was originally developed for gauge porcelain panels, and we did a lot of gauge porcelain panel training. It's one of our most popular training sessions. It's probably, yeah, so that one definitely, I think most of our tile installers really appreciate and love. And I've been seeing more and more installers on the tile side using self levelers.
Wow.
So it used to be kind of, I don't want to say traditionally, but more commonly, it was our resilient flooring guys that always use self levelers, and we're using a lot of our patching products. Well, as tile has gotten bigger and bigger, the floors need to be flatter and flatter, the walls need to be flatter and flatter, and we're seeing more tile installers move towards surface preparation products as part of their prep, just due to that more stringent requirement for substrate prep.
That's great. So, uniquely, you come out with an engineering degree, and in 6 to 7 years, you're now leading a technical team. You're quite young. What do you think? What do you think qualified you for this position?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, engineering, I worked for quite a while in automotive as well when I was getting my degree. So I realized during the degree, I guess, that I don't really enjoy production engineering. And do you know what most chemical engineers end up doing?
This production.
Production engineering.
Yeah,
um,
you come across quite outgoing, right? I mean, I don't want to stereotype what a typical engineer looks like, but
no,
I
no,
know a lot of engineers, and you are a
yep.
very social, outgoing person. Is that part of it? Your character is what possibly
I do
qualifies?
honestly think that is a huge piece of it, that you have to be very outgoing in this industry. And I think that, you know, I spent enough time in the technical role, and the way technical kind of works is we're the bridge between R&D and the field, right? You need to have the field experience to know what products are going to work, how they're going to work. But then you also need to have enough of the chemistry background to know when can you push boundaries, when can you expect something to work, or why would something not work in a given situation. So honestly, I think that was a huge piece of it. I also went back, and I think my experience in kind of leading teams and as part of my training manager role definitely helped out. And I actually went back starting in 2019, and I started getting my master's in business administration,
Excellent.
which has definitely made the transition a lot easier. Just like you said, I am a little bit young, and one of the ways that you offset some of the experience that you gain, for me, it was going back to school and learning a lot about leadership and team management, and then also just how to run a business, right? How our businesses run, what are the different financial metrics you're looking at, in addition to how do you best manage teams, how do you best support those that you're working with, and manage large projects, right?
It's an excellent answer. So let's talk about the installation side. You come from the product side, but you're involved on the installation side. What have you done, or how have you relied on others in your company to really understand the complexities of a tile installation so that you're qualified to oversee a department like this?
Yeah, so what I will say is one of the first things that I did, is I actually attended the class down at CTEF,
Okay.
the understanding and
Week
installing.
long.
I did.
Yeah.
I think I've taken every course that's run by CTEF at this point in time,
Right.
just because I don't have the installation background. I that's not something that I can really try and say that I do. I don't. I'm a very handy person. I've done a lot of other construction work. I do a lot of woodworking in my free time, but it's not the same. Like you said, it's not an installation background. So I work really hard to not just understand and work with people internally, but then also go to the industry organizations and attend the other trainings, the outside trainings that are offered in our industry, to kind of understand, okay, we can talk about the standards and the chemistry, but what's the reality that installers are facing, right? When they are installing, because it's not as easy. I can tell you what ANSI standards and how flat everything should be, but I think if you don't understand the challenges people are up against in the field, it's hard to be able to make those recommendations and to be able to train people on what they need to be doing to meet the standards, if that makes any sense.
It does.
So I've done that, and then I've also done a lot of travel and work. You might know Chris Kane,
Yeah.
who works for us. I think he and I have worked together almost nonstop for the last 6.5 years, and he's got to be going on close to 20 years with Tech HB Fuller, and he has a lot of field experience across the country. And he and I have done a lot of field trials, job site inspections, and visits together to kind of, especially as I was starting, right, to get me to understand what is out there, what should or shouldn't be happening. And also, regionally in the US, construction is so different depending on where you are.
Yes.
If you're up in New York, it's vastly different than Texas, is vastly different than what you might see in the Pacific Northwest, right? So what are the different installation methods, or what are the different construction methods is maybe the way I should put it. And how does that change what products can or can't be used,
Mhm.
and what people are going to do with the products that you have.
And brand preferences, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you see that there are people that are more receptive to certain product lines of yours in different markets. Can you comment
Yeah.
on that? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, the example I'll kind of give is you get into a lot of the Southeast, it's a lot of slab on grade, right? So a lot of the products that they're going to use, they're not looking for something that is going to be able to bond to plywood, or that is going to
Right.
go through crazy freeze thaw cycles like we see up in, the Midwest, right? So the products they're looking for are going to be definitely different. And, honestly, the performance that is needed based off of where and what you're installing off of, and I think that's one of the things that you always have to be aware of is what's really required for the installation. It would be easy for me to go and recommend, Superflex or 3-in-1, which is kind of our two highest performing products across the board, and just say that's all anyone should ever use. And it's true, between, those two products, or our new Total Flex 150, that honestly is pretty much all you would need. But in some areas, maybe there are other options for what they're using that work for what they need.
Mhm. How do you approach? So tell me a little bit about your training process. You mentioned Chris. I like to think of Chris as your almost like your work husband, right? I mean, everywhere I see him with you in pictures and at events all over the place. But how do you guys approach training? Do you do that through distribution and in support? I know you support like NTCA in our
Yep.
event, but what's the tech HB Fuller approach to training with your products?
Yeah, so typically we do really like to work with distributors, and part of the reason for that is just the flexibility of location,
Yeah.
right? Contractors are busy. Most of them have very, their schedules are crazy, and finding time to come in and do industry trainings, it's a time commitment, right? And we like to try and get them as much, information and knowledge as possible without requiring them to have to travel, for an entire week to be with us. So working with distributors allows us to bring training to their locations. Um, and I always look at it as, I mean, I can tell people how to do things or what they should be doing, but if you don't get to do hands-on, it doesn't really mean anything. I can tell you that how flat something needs to be or how you should be installing it, but until you actually get a chance to do the installation and practice it, and not just practice it once, but maybe practice it 2 or 3 times, right? It's not as meaningful. You have to get that hands-on aspect. So yeah, we work with our distribution partners to make it local and easy for people to attend. And honestly, one of our goals when we do that is, let's say, for example, we do a gauge porcelain panel training, right? I don't know that everyone that attends that training will do gauge porcelain panel at the end of it. And we've actually had some trainings where, and this is my favorite thing about it, you know, we've had classes where people came in and said, "Hey, great training, really enjoyed it. I'm not touching this stuff." You know
It's
what
not
I
for
mean?
me.
Like, not for
Hey,
me. And I appreciate that. That's
I
the
do.
time to learn it.
Actually, that's a really interesting take that you have, or an interesting comment, which is that doesn't mean that training wasn't valuable, because to have
Right.
that person understand that and not go
Yeah.
do it wrong and we have a multi-thousand-dollar failure,
Right.
right? It's not a bad thing.
Right. And the other thing I would say is, it's time that we get to work with our customers so that they feel comfortable calling us, right? So even let's say that they never go and do a gauge porcelain, they attend a gauge porcelain panel training and they never go and install a gauge porcelain panel in their life. That doesn't necessarily mean, like you said, it was a bad training, because did they get to talk with our reps? Did they get to meet their technical rep? Did they get to meet their distribution reps? Did they get to meet me or Chris or someone else that could support them in something later on? That still, to me, is something that will help. And I always have to, in technical, we have to deal with potential issues. I'd rather prevent an issue by getting you our contact information and having you feel comfortable calling us up and asking those questions than having to worry that you don't know who to call, so you did the best you could, and now we have to worry about trying to mitigate something that's already been installed. It's so much easier when we get those calls ahead of time, and the only way we can get them is if you know who they are, you have their contact information, and again, you feel comfortable, you feel like they can actually help you,
Right.
instead of just you know yeah, they had the tech rep's number, but I don't know, I've never met him and I don't want to worry about it. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. What do you find so in this new role? What's the most challenging aspect of your new role? Is it customer relations? Is it managing people? What do you find the most challenging in this new position since you've had it for about a little over a year or
A
around a
little
year?
under a year, yeah.
Around a year.
Um, I think the biggest transition for me has been the management aspect of it. That's something that, up until that point, I've only ever had to worry about what I'm working on, what I'm doing, and I haven't had to really strategize what each individual piece of the puzzle is doing. But I will say that it's been really, really fun too, because I've been able to hire and train and work with some amazing people that I wouldn't have gotten this interaction with before.
Yeah.
And as much as it can be stressful and challenging and, like a little bit like drinking through a fire hose, I wouldn't I wouldn't have had a chance to work with some of the people that I work with now. And that I think that would be a shame. I absolutely, I mean, I don't
Seems
think I'm bragging when I say I have a great team,
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It seems like you like and welcome challenges. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the installations or on the technical hotline, we get a lot of this ourselves, a lot of technical calls, a lot of technical questions. What's the common thread here that you find? Is it often it's an installation failure? I would guess to say it's rarely where the product is failing if it's used properly. Are you finding where a lot of installers are chemists and they mix H.B. Fuller or Tech with custom building products or Latacrete or what is it a common theme that you guys find when you get these types of calls?
Yeah, so I'll actually, that reminds me, one of the, I think, craziest claims we ever had, and this is not a joke, is someone took our ready to use grout and mixed it with half of Latacrete's epoxy.
Yeah,
That's an
interesting.
actual thing someone did, and they
None of
said that,
this
oh no,
surprises.
that's what we were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I don't think anyone at Tech and I don't think anyone at Latacrete would have recommended
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
uh, I would say that the large volume of calls that come in are questions, right? I would say that a majority of them and all of our distribution partners and a lot of our contractors know to call the hotline when they're not sure which product to be using. Can they use it in a certain application? Can they use it in a certain way? If they're curious about a standard, is it compatible? We actually joke a little bit. One of our technical support hotline specialists has been with us for, when I say a long time, she has been with us for a very long time. Ironically enough, one of our R&D chemists actually used to be a contractor before he came to work with us as an R&D chemist, and he knew her by name because they had worked together for like 20 years while he was contracting. And then when he came over to the R&D side, he now gets to work with her, right? And so there's a vast amount of knowledge. And I think that when our contractors realize that, hey, you can pick up the phone and get an answer, you can get information. And you know what, maybe sometimes the questions that they get are outside the scope of what our hotline might be able to answer. Maybe it is a chemistry question, or it is a more challenging issue than just a straightforward answer. They can get the ball rolling to be talking to R&D, to be talking to a technical rep, and they know who to go to, that they can really help route things as quickly as possible to get you a fast response.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great. So you're a young woman in a male-oriented or dominated industry, the construction industry, certainly the tile industry. That we have a lot of women in the tile industry and it's growing. But what has your experience been like as a woman entering the tile industry, and any challenges to how you're treated on the road, especially if you're out training with product with tile installers, which are predominantly male? Can you talk to us to the other young women that might be considering construction or tile, because you are not, we have a lot of women in distribution and sales and design, but you're in the technical side. So talk to us a little bit about what that's like to be, what it took for you to get respected, or maybe still in the process of being treated and respected right as a woman in the tile trade.
Yeah, so I will say that I do think the most common response I get is that people think I'm in marketing or sales or something
Exactly.
similar to that.
Yeah.
I think their last guess is normally technical. And I think it's been a really interesting, it's interesting to see how different people respond. But one thing that I will say is that typically within the first 10 minutes, if you show you're competent, people don't worry about anything else, right? If you know what you're doing, if you know your stuff, if you know what you should or shouldn't be doing, job site realities, technical standards, it shows. That competence shows, you know? And I always kind of say that most installers have a pretty good BS meter, that if you don't know what you're doing, they'll call you on it, right? And if you know and are competent and confident, they are one of the most fun groups to be around. But you need to show that competence. You need to show that you know what you're doing and follow up. It can't just be talk, right? And when I do, you know, trainings and things like that, I'm not going to be standing in the background, you know, telling someone else to do it for me. You know, I build the modules. I do as much work as anyone else that's on our team. If you want me to do a full installation training, you know, I will do it step by step with any of the installers. And you can't just stand back and be passive, I guess. You need to, you know, step up and get involved. And again, if you show that competence,
Yeah,
people are very receptive.
that's a great answer. You know, we interviewed Erin Albrecht, who is the president of a contracting firm down in San Antonio, about a year ago, and she said almost verbatim, she said the same thing that you said, which is they can see through. Like the first 10 minutes are crucial. She didn't care if you were with a general contractor,
Yep.
or with a designer. And and you touched on it, where you said you build your credibility, but you also said earlier in this interview that, you know, that you were not an installer. And so sometimes just transparency, right? Just being honest.
Oh, yeah.
I know my product, I know how it's installed, I know how it's mixed, but I'm not a tile contractor. This is not who I am. But together we can solve these challenges, because I know the product, you know the installation, and we can talk about what the right product is or the right system is for your job.
Oh, 100. And I'll always say, if you want me to do a tile job, do not pay me by the hour. You would lose money on that job, because I can do it. I know what the standards are, but it will take me a lot longer than someone that does it every single day, you know? And oh my God, we did a tile job at our house, and my husband's a mechanical engineer, and so he has all of the modeling software, and we literally had to go in, because I don't know, measurements, it's very difficult for me to visualize things when you start looking at dimensions and things like that. And we literally had to do a 3D mock-up of where did we want all the tile to go so that it fell in a place that we were happy with, and we didn't have any slivers or anything that wasn't to standard. Because again, for me, it's really hard for me to visualize that. I needed to see a picture.
Yeah,
Can I do it? Yes. Did it require 3D modeling software? Maybe.
No, I completely understand. So you mentioned your husband, mechanical engineer, two engineers in the family. Tell us a little bit about you as a person outside of tile. What are some passions, hobbies, things of that nature? Dogs, children. I think you're a runner like me, but maybe tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, well, I guess just to start off with my husband, I straight up couldn't do this job without him.
You travel a lot, so that puts a lot
I
of
do.
challenges. It takes a very understanding partner. Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, when I first took that technical rep role, he and we'd been together for, we weren't married quite yet, but we'd been together for about 6 years. And I basically said, you know, we sat down and we looked at the schedule, and I said, if we can't do this, then I'll just say no.
Yep.
You know, if this isn't something that we can do, it's not worth it, right? We've been, I think this in November, so we've been together 11 years at this point in time. So it's been a long time, and luckily he's very supportive. And he takes care of, you mentioned the dogs. I have I have an Australian Shepherd and Australian cattle dog. And both of them, actually, we do nose work with, which is like the sport version of what like bomb sniffing dogs do. It's kind of like the, I want to say for fun, but it's the low key version of that, because if you know Australian Shepherds, you know they are not unintelligent. Our male Aussie can open and unlock any door in our house at will. So
I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm on my third Australian Shepherd.
Okay, so you know.
So I've had Australian Shepherds for about 30 years. So yes, we have another thing in common.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the switch from Australian Shepherd, our most recent one, is an Australian Shepherd mixed with a cattle dog.
Yeah.
And that was a bit more of a switch than I was expecting. She's a little bit more assertive than our Australian Shepherds have been. But yeah, as you can imagine, when I'm gone, I mean, they're not low key, low energy dogs. They're not going to sit on the couch. And that is something that he I'm very grateful to be, he supports and he's able to take care of them while I'm gone. They also are very good running partners. I do triathlons actually is currently what I've been focusing on the past year or two. So I did 2 last year, and I'm hoping this year maybe to get to an Olympic length triathlon at some point here this upcoming summer, but we'll see.
How do you train? How do you balance that? As busy as you are with incorporating training into your lifestyle.
Yeah, so one of the philosophies I have, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So this one, it's something that really took me a long time to get. 50% is better than 0%. So a lot of people think, oh, if you're going to go do a workout, you're going to train for something, you got to do at least an hour. You got to do at least 45 minutes. Sometimes, I'm on the road. I'll look at my watch. I've got 20 minutes.
Yep.
What can I do in 20 minutes? You know what I mean? What can I get done in the amount of time that I have? And instead of trying to put other things off or whatever, just say, I've got 15 minutes here. What can I get done in that? Can I do a 2-mile run? Can I do a 3-mile run with the time I have? Or, and go for a bike ride or whatever to try and get the time in. And it's realizing and not getting defeated by the fact that you can't get a full hour, right? It's what time do you have and what can you do with it, right?
It's really
Instead
good
of
advice. Yep.
Yeah.
It is. Especially when you're traveling, you're on the road. I know for me personally, sometimes it's like, I didn't sleep well. I'm out in Vegas. It's 5 a.m. and it's like, do I just lay here and rest, or do I go down and try to get 2 miles in before? And the funny thing is with exercise, I always feel better after I exercise.
Oh yeah, 100%. You get so much more, like, you're energetic. I mean, when I was out at Surfaces last week, I went down to the gym every day. I actually missed out. Traditionally, there's a state park or I forget what it might be a national park. There's like some hiking trails within about 30 minutes of Vegas. And traditionally I would always go out to one of those hiking trails. I didn't get to do that this year. I didn't have a vehicle that I had rented, so I didn't quite get to make it out there. So I had to make do with the gym. But yeah, no, you always feel so much more energized and better after, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes, even I think on the last day, I realized I hadn't been outside of the building in maybe a day and a half. So I was like, you know what? I don't even care. I'm just going to go walk outside, just get out of the building in the sunshine for a little bit because I can't sit down in here any longer.
Well, you're already the national technical manager of a large division in a large company. You're very young. What do you long-term goals? Have you set anything related, either personal or professional, from a long-term goal perspective that you would love to see, 5 years from now, 10, 15, 20?
So my personal answer for that is that I'm not too picky about the specifics. My only goal is I want to get to go to work. I don't want to have to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's maybe a nuance, but does that make sense? I don't want to like wake up every morning and be like, oh, I have to go in today. I want to be like, oh, sweet. Like, I enjoy my job enough that this is exciting and I want to do it. Right.
And if it's not, go find something else to do. Right.
And the nice thing that I've really enjoyed working for H.B. Fuller is you mentioned earlier, I really like a challenge. I enjoy building things. I enjoy, making programs or either building myself personally up, constantly having a challenge that you're working on. And I've been lucky enough in Fuller that I've been given those opportunities to have, to meet that challenge, to have that next step. Right. So I wouldn't necessarily say I have anything specifically for 5-10 years out other than, I enjoy a challenge and I hope that I constantly get challenged with growth of team, right? The growth of what we're doing. And then also, I mean, the industry doesn't stay the same. I need to make sure that I'm with it as well.
That's great. Well, listen, this has been very enjoyable for me personally. So thank you for being our guest today. And we look forward to seeing you on the road and at our events like Coverings and Total Solutions Plus, as we see you and Chris Kane and others from Tech and H.B. Fuller on the road. So thank you, Heather, for being our guest today.
Of course. Thank you.
You've been listening to Heather Ruhl. She is the National Technical Manager for H.B. Fuller with the tech brand of tile industry adhesives and grouts and mortars and membranes and everything else. So thanks again, Heather, and have a great day.